Well, thank you, Ms. Ritchie, for your testimony and for sharing the story of Jeff, and also for the work that you do at the Wounded Warrior Project to represent and assist veterans such as Jeff. I will recognize myself now for 5 minutes for questions, and I'd like to go back to Dr. Shulkin's statement and just pull out a few words that you mentioned, Dr. Shulkin. You mentioned this adversarial relationship between veterans and the VA, and I think that Ms. Ritchie's story about a particular veteran who she's worked with who has very dire and urgent health concerns and needs, and wants that help from the VA and has this huge burden of providing a large amount of evidence to link his condition and his current health concerns to his service, is a perfect example of this adversarial relationship where the burden is placed on the veteran that you're referencing. And as members of Congress and looking towards the work that we can do in the next Congress, the 117th, can you provide us with some ideas from your work and the things that you would suggest we could do to make this process easier for veterans, to take this burden off of them, and to help make sure that they get the health care that they need in a timely manner?
Yeah. First of all, Chairman Luria, thank you for your question, because it shows that you really do have an appreciation for what thousands of veterans and their families are going through, the story of Jeff just over and over again. And, we have developed an entire bureaucracy at the Department of Veteran Affairs to deal with these issues. And the end result are hundreds of thousands of appeals that we've been dealing with for decades. And frankly, our veterans have been waiting for decades. When I was secretary, I dealt with World War II veterans who were exposed to mustard gas that had never been given the benefits that they earned. And then, of course, we all know the story of the Vietnam veterans, and then come the Korean veterans and every generation, we just repeat the same thing. So basically, I believe the system that we need is we need to do a better job of collecting the data right from the start, like several members of the subcommittee have talked about. Where there is data, we need to make quick decisions, but where there's not data, but there is essentially more likely than not a plausible explanation, we should be granting the benefits at that time, and certainly not making people wait without benefits or without health care while we go out and collect data. Too often, the Department of Veteran Affairs has used waiting for studies and issuing additional studies for essentially decades and not making decisions, and it's just not appropriate. We can act like the private sector acts in the disability world and grant decisions early on. And frankly, I think it's going to save taxpayers money in the long run than this constant decades of appeals and reappeals.
Well, thank you, Dr. Shulkin. And, just thinking about that suggestion that you've made about prompt granting of the approval and access to the healthcare, I guess one question I have, and I don't know if you can comment on, if you think it's realistic that, we would grant a veteran that care and then evaluate it as time went on, do you find it problematic that may at some point necessitate reducing or removing the care based off of further evidence, and how would we deal with situations like that?
Well, I do believe that it is time to be trying something different. Continuing the current system that we have, frankly, isn't something that I think is in the benefit of veterans or taxpayers. So I think we should be trying, just like in the healthcare system, different experiments or different pilots on disability compensation. I do believe lump sum payments up front, where you can make a determination. There has to be some type of economic exchange for a upfront determination where veterans get the help. I believe that is certainly something that should be tried. And that's what I'm talking about the science of behavioral economics. I do believe that you can grant people immediate access to help. And if there is data that comes down the road, I believe that it is appropriate to be able to reevaluate those decisions. But that has to be done with a transparency up front so the veteran understands that that may be a possibility. So, but our current system of just making the veteran wait without help, I think is the worst alternative of all of them.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your work and your thought that you've put into this topic, and we certainly appreciate you sharing that with us in the format of this hearing. And I know that as we move into the next Congress, I think that we're all united in saying that we want to take that burden off of the veteran, and we will definitely take into consideration this and other concepts that could help relieve that burden from our veterans who have served. My time has expired, and I will now recognize Mr. Bost for 5 minutes.